I have one of my superpowers is I have an incredibly attuned vibe check. And once we first met, and then we had even subsequent meetings after, I was like, this one is not getting out of my grasp. You'll take her from my cold, dead hands. I just such a cool and amazing human. And I think that those people, when you meet them, you need to keep them.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fail with Fire podcast. I am your host, Phoenix Ha, the CEO of AdBeacon, my favorite first-party data attribution and optimization platform. What's really fun about today is we should be enemies, my guest, but we're not. We're good friends. I think he's awesome. And there's just, again, very specific people in this space that I choose to align myself with, and Rabah is one of them. So welcome to the podcast, Rabah Rahil.
Thank you, Phoenix. Amazing. I have one of my superpowers is I have an incredibly attuned vibe check. And once we first met, and then we had even subsequent meetings after, I was like, this one is not getting out of my grasp. You'll take her from my cold, dead hands. I just really fuck with your vibe, and you're just such a cool and amazing human. And I think that those people, when you meet them, you need to keep them.
Need to keep the sentiment. It goes both ways, and honestly, I'm so grateful for this space. And a little intro about Rabah is I have heard Rabah's name time and time again in the Twitter space when I was, just kind of like watching before I started activating my Twitter space, right? And then I'm listening and listening to how people are talking about you, right? That's the best way to get to know people, is how are others speaking about this person? And maybe not taking it for, everything that's the truth, because your interaction is going to be direct. But with Rabah, I've always heard encouraging, very intellectual, super fun. And then I go to
incredibly good looking, obviously.
Yeah. All of those things, right? I thought you were Israeli too, because I know that
I get that a lot. Yeah.
So, surprise, surprise. Rabah is the chief evangelist at Triple Whale, which is another first-party data attribution platform. I very much think that they've done an incredible job. We just do some things that are different. And the beauty of the space is that when I met Rabah at this event, I didn't even know it was Rabah. I was like, I really want to meet Rabah. We kind of banter on Twitter. And turns out he was right in front of me. And we sat down, and I was like, first thing that came out of my mouth, I was like, are we good? Are we cool? And you said something that made my heart swell. You were like, I've been a big fan of you for some time. And I'm like, me? Like, what? And just that click, and I think this idea of there should be tension in the space between you and I, and there was no tension, made me love this business more. So thank you for that.
No, of course. I'm always a big believer. I think there are very rare instances of zero-sum games. And I think that it's, I try and come from two places, a place of abundance and a place of assuming everybody is smart and well-intentioned. A lot of people don't end there, but that's where I like to start, because it's easier to ratchet down to this person's amazing, smart, well-intentioned, to, oh my gosh, this person's toxic, get them out of my life, versus ratcheting up of assuming they're toxic and going the other way. And yeah, 38 years worked out so far.
You know what? I'm here for it. And I really admire that you have that mindset. I have a very similar mindset. So to find someone that aligns with that is huge. And as the formal introduction to Rabah, for those of you who don't know him, and after this, you better look him up and follow him. But he has over 18 years of experience in this industry of direct-to-consumer marketing. And I was reading this, and I saw that you worked with Oprah, which, excuse me, you worked with Oprah.
Yeah.
You've also crafted and forged your career in School of Hard Knocks of Advertising. I love it. So good. And former CMO of Triple Whale, now chief evangelist, which is incredible. Yep. And all the things that you've been doing, of all the things you've done, the thing that I actually admire you most for is your podcast with Chase Moseni.
Yeah. Well, another guy that once I met, I was like, God, I'm in. Powerful Growth Vault, shameless plug. Absolutely.
And it's the Growth Vault is, if you guys haven't listened to the Growth Vault, really sit there and listen. And Sometimes I have to rewind and then listen to it again because like something went straight over my head. I'm like, oh, whoa, that's a lot. But I love that because I want to learn more from it. So anyway, Rabah, welcome to the podcast. We are so happy to have you. And in true Fail with Fire, I think structure, kind of walk me through or kind of tell me, hey, if we were at a barbecue and let's just say your mom or your dad, anybody in your life that's 10 degrees separated from what we do, were to introduce you to me, how would they describe you and what you do for a living?
One, that's such a sensational question. Two, that was probably the best intro I've ever gotten. So anytime I need to just record you as my hype man. And then three, to your question, I think there's a few kind of attributes. One, I'm very gregarious, so I'm just kind of just a really hard on the sleeve, crazy guy, incredibly passionate. I try and be very kind and gracious, almost to a fault. I'm trying to figure out like there's a great book called Better Than Before, and there's like archetypes of people, and I'm very much so an obliger. Like I just don't say no well. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that because you can get to a place of pouring from an empty cup. But yeah, I think people would just characterize me as crazy, rambunctious, passionate. I'm smart in spots, so I try and stay around those spots. I like to live life. I literally have a tattoo that says, "What's the point of being alive if you're not living?" So I think living in the present is fun, and so I think, or I would hope, people kind of would land somewhere around that. And to your point, I really do feel like now that because I'm old now, so I'm at a stage of my career where I'm trying to really also give back to the up and comers because I was shepherded and people that, at the beginning of my career, I was a nobody. I mean, still not a somebody, but you know what I'm saying? Like just a bleep on these people's radar. And they were just so gracious, so kind to me. Nick Shackelford, Nick Sharma, a bunch of other really kind of killers in the space were just so gracious to me on my come up. And so yeah, I think that's kind of the overall description. The too long didn't read. Nice, crazy, love sneakers, super helpful in terms of go-to-market motions and marketing. And I know a lot of really random facts as well. I can hold down some trivia pretty decent.
First of all, you are somebody to me, Rabah, and I'm gonna answer the question for you since you didn't answer it directly. If I based because I actually don't know you super, super well. I get to know
Okay, yeah.
you from afar. How I would describe you if I didn't know your D2C background. I would say Rabah is a very big heart with some legs. Um, he knows when to speak and when not to speak. He sees sarcasm 15 miles away and probably is attracted to it. He has a crazy attention to detail and process and flow, which probably aligns with his work. The reason why I say that is I watched you chart your course with your trek across Europe, um, tweet about it, talk about it in depth, put it on Instagram just because you wanted to. And for me, I go, yep, I know that type. So I see all those attributes about you, and all I can say are positive things. I don't think there's one negative thing I could say about Rabah so
Oh,
far.
that's beautiful. And again, hired as the hype man. Very well said.
Don't, because again, it's just honesty. So if things go awry, the honesty comes with the same amount of force.
I love
But
it. I love that
also,
about you.
huge sneakerhead over here. I see the
I
Ben and
am.
Jerry's drop. Okay, what
Yeah.
is newest cop in
I
terms?
ac Yeah, I actually just got these, not a huge buy, but they are, so I only collect Dunks, either SB Dunks or Dunk Lows or Dunk Highs and Air Jordan 1s. Those were kinda just a fun buy, but I actually do have some, off-white Blazers. They're, the Grim Reaper. They're all black, and they're amazing. Those are coming, I think, on Tuesday, but yeah, I have a better than most vices. But yeah, that was my startup therapy when I was starting at Triple Whale. It was so stressful, and every Friday I would just go and hit the mall. I found this guy that was awesome. He has a sneaker store in the mall. Shout out Shy, Dirty Kicks, and things just escalated from there. I have the real heat though, actually, in my living room. I have them all stacked up. It's pretty
In the
fun.
vault. In the
Yeah,
vault.
yeah, yes,
And the
exactly.
Jeffree Star pink vault that nobody can get into with the massive amounts of investment in terms of shoes. In his case, bags, Hermes. You know,
Correct.
I come from a footwear background. So when I was
I
seeing
didn't
you,
know that.
so I was interim marketing director at Supra Footwear. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah,
Supra?
yeah, yeah.
So I worked directly with a lot of skaters. That was my vibe, and like a lot of activations with a piss poor budget, but we wanted to just get like rowdy with it. And then
Yeah.
I worked with K Swiss. So my friend Homie Diaz is the one that
No
designed the
way.
Gary Vee shoe. And I was sitting with him with the clouds and the dirt shoe. We would sit there and go back and forth. He's very, very good friend of mine. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So this is like, it's a small world. We
It
look
is a small world. That is incredible. Powerful K-Swiss, little throwback. I love it.
we love a little K Swiss throwback, and
Yeah, yeah.
we can go into it. But I mean, it's that actually led to a big failure of mine because like I was on top of the world. I was like 23 managing this crazy budget. And I don't even know how to manage my own budget at home,
Yep.
let alone somebody, this multinational company, right? But then things really failed after that. I actually quit my job there because it wasn't being fulfilled. And on top of that, I had a partner at the time that I was trying to support him with. That didn't work out.
Yeah.
But that became a catalyst to the fire of me coming back. And this is, a world of experiential marketing that had nothing to do with a metric based strategy in terms of D2C or paid media. And then
Yeah.
things shifted for me. And that was a huge fail to fire moment, which leads me to asking you, Rabah, in your 38 years that you just declared, what are some moments that you would like to highlight that are failures, and whether they be personal or whether they're like a professional failure? Let's just dig in because I would love to hear about it.
Yeah. So I think the one that sticks out the biggest for me, or at least it was the biggest inflection point in my life, is so I wanted to be an investment banker at one point in time. I ended up going to school for finance. Shout out Indiana University. And then I realized I didn't want to be an investment banker, so I ended up switching my major to economics. I graduated school. Awesome. This was during the housing collapse. So it was 2008. So really horrible time to come out into the market. And I had just all these ideas of I'm going to make all this money as an economist, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up not being able to find a job. I ended up having to take my old job, which I left, which I used to have in college, which was selling women's shoes in Nordstrom. Small digression. I think everybody should do some sort of sales stint. I think it just makes you a way better marketer. Um, and so there was just this time where I was selling shoes to people. And when you're doing this, because these are kind of high end shoes, so you get a lot of, fairly affluent women coming in, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just small talk. It just happens. And it's like, oh, what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, yeah, I just graduated, blah, 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 with a degree in economics, et cetera, et cetera. And you would just see them doing the math in their head, like, then why are you here selling shoes? And so that was a huge kind of not only blow to the ego, but really a get your shit together. So I pretty much was just crazy in my 20s. And then I finally found marketing, more specifically digital marketing. And so I started doing stuff with friends. And then I hooked up with one of my buddies. His wife was a big Instagram influencer with yoga. I was really into photography at the time. So I flew out. They have a place in Costa Rica. I shot all the photography, designed the ebooks. She gave me all the copy and where she wanted the pictures. I made it pretty, just used Canva. And then we made a bunch of money off, or not a bunch of money, but like for me at the time, like actual money. And this was during the age of you put $1 in Facebook and $6 would come back, or she would post on Instagram and then the retargeting would just kick in. And it was just the golden era of Facebook in the way. And so that then propelled me into, I worked at a luxury real estate firm and then doing the marketing there. Then from there, I got to move up to the big leagues where I went to Whole Foods. I ran the whole paid media recruitment vertical there at Whole Foods. And then from there, I went to an agency, which we got to work with Oprah, spent millions of dollars there. And then from that, I spun out my own agency. And then I was actually in a really great place. Life was great. And then AJ and I started bantering back and forth on Twitter about Triple. And then from there, it just kind of went like a rocket ship, kind of that honeymoon period. I don't know if you've ever bounced ideas off of somebody when you're quasi hiring, but you're also just kind of looking for guidance. And then you're just like, these are really great. Do you just want to do this? It's kind of what happened with me, AJ, and Max. And then from there, CMO, fastest growing Shopify app ever. Shopify ended up coming into our A. I mean, it was just a absolutely crazy whirlwind, but having that, it's almost that darkest before the dawn where there's like my biggest fear is being mediocre. And I think there's so many comforts in life that can really incentivize you not going after your why, or I'm quasi hippy dippy. Like I have a 200-pound geode amethyst in my or amethyst geode in my living room. And there's a great book called The Alchemist. And I think when you start to pursue your personal legend and figure out what that is, I think life just becomes really, really awesome and meaningful. And so, yeah, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of hard kind of not making money, doing a lot of spec work, just helping friends out, things of that nature. But it was really that kind of inflection point for me is I was made for greatness and this isn't greatness. And so, let's figure it out. And I think it's easy to get caught in, oh, woe is me kind of stuff. And so I think it's really productive to have more leading goals than lagging goals. And so always sharpening the saw. What is something you learned today that can insulate you from poverty? Who is a person you connected with? How did you help somebody today? And so I would just kind of go through this mental checklist in my head every day. And that kind of brings me to the last point where I think people fail for two reasons. One, they don't knock on the door long enough for the universe to answer. They quit too early. And then two, when the universe does answer, they're not prepared. So every time I had this just really random break or crazy like opportunity, I was there and I knew what to do because I had been reading, I had been studying, I had been always looking at ways, like I was just absolutely fascinated in marketing and business and economics. And so being able to jump in when the universe answered, I think was really important. But yeah, it's easier to look back on than it is to do it. And so I know if you're out there, don't get too sad if you're not where you are. It happens a lot slower than you think and then a lot faster than you think.
If you haven't figured this out yet, listeners, you just heard how Rabah's brain thinks in a full train of thought, right? Like it's so beautiful to listen to you because I can hear where your brain goes and jumps and I can relate to it, right? Some people might go, what the hell did he just say? And then some people might go, I totally get it. And I'm one of those people that's like, I totally get it. And mind you, every time I do this podcast, I take notes of what people are saying because
Well, that's good.
there's always these nuggets, right? These
Yeah.
incredible nuggets. And I'm going to dial it back for you. That's my job. My job is to piece apart what you just said. And let me
Love
do
it.
that now. Number one is what tends to happen on this podcast is you either have a guest that really goes deep down into this one specific core memory that unlocked an untapped opportunity or whatever that feeling is. And then we sit in it together. And in your case, it's a little different. It's a feeling. And I relate to that feeling. It's something you said, which was incredible, was I knew I was made for greatness and this wasn't greatness. I love that you said that because for those of you who understand that, we can press into it. You know you're built for something good. You know there's something big on the horizon. You know you're going to figure it out. There's something there. But what often happens is that you go to a company or you're with a set of people that don't know how to value it, don't know how to nurture it, right? And what will happen is people like Rabah and myself will end up finding people who do or pushing other people out of the way, not on purpose. So I guess my question to you, Rabah, is with this mentality, were there a lot of haters in the group that were like, Rabah's just going full send in the wrong direction? Or did you have any like friction?
Yeah, no, that's really well put. So another one of kind of the theses and tenets I have in my life is your environment's everything. And so I'm around, I know some fairly wealthy people, some fairly fit people, some things that you have to really commit to obtain, put it that way. And almost all of them, it's not a function of discipline. It's a function of environment setup, and they make the choice that they want to make be the easiest choice. I think people are a path of least resistance. And so they don't have to lean on their discipline day in and day out. They just run loops. And so finding those productivity loops and designing the environment for the life you want, that to me is the biggest unlock. And then to your point, when you're doing that, it's challenging, but you have to cut some people out of your life that aren't supportive in that. So I grew up in the Midwest. There's nothing wrong with Indiana. Indianapolis is a nice enough city, but there's not a lot of ambitious people there. And so what happens is when you start talking about all these crazy pie in the sky goals, instead of support or even just excitement, where it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love you. I think you're going to fucking crush. You get a lot of condescension. And to your point, like what the kids will call it, haters, And there's a really good metaphor. It's called crabs in a bucket. And it's really a perplexing phenomenon. So if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and if one crab starts to climb out of that bucket, all the other crabs will pull that crab back in. And so you really need to get out of that bucket and around people that'll support you, encourage you, and that's it. And the challenge is there's a lot of really good people that just might not align with that skill set. And so when I did kind of make this transformation, it was hard because I had to kind of cut a lot of people out of my life that I think are just still think they're really great people. It was just there wasn't enough room there. And the other thing that happens is when you do cut those people out of your life, you actually make space for people that are awesome that will support you. And so that, and then there's another kind of heuristic I like to use where when you interact with somebody, do you get energy from them or do you feel like they took energy from you? And if you're around any sort of energy vampires, they have to go. There's just no way around it. They have to go. They will be an albatross around your neck for the rest of your life. Cut them out of your life. And I think the last thing I would say is I'm not a big believer. I don't think people change. I think there's a core you, and there's certain things that will augment or mute certain characteristics, but I think you're pretty much forged. And so again, this goes back to that environment design where I think making your weaknesses into strengths is horrific advice. I think what you need to do is make your weaknesses non-existential threats so they can't scuttle the system and really just lean into what you're great at. Like that's where the money is, that's where the excitement is, that's where the passion is. And that's how I think all skill acquisition candidly works is a flywheel where you're interested in something, you're quasi good at it. So you do it because you do it, you get better at it because you get better at it. You feel accomplished, you might get complimented, etc. That makes you want to do it more. And you get this really natural progression of skill acquisition where just because you are good at it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it, but find that overlap between what you're passionate about and what you're actually good at. And that's where I would place my bets.
So crawl out of the bucket because the bucket is disaster, right? From the crabs pulling you down.
You got to get away from those people.
That's insane. I'm so thrilled for you to be on this podcast because there are layers to what you just said, like real onion layers that without the stink, right? Maybe. But like there's so much into that because who you surround yourself with, right? You just said your environment is everything.
Yep.
I loved what you said because this is the first time I've heard this perspective out loud. Is the fact that some of the most successful people are not successful just because of discipline. It's because of the environment that they surround themselves with.
Yep.
And that is so true because most brilliant people I know have massive ADD and ADHD. Okay. It doesn't mean they have discipline. It means that they know that they're good at something and then they get obsessive and then they go in that route, which is very much why that their personal partners are the complete opposite of them, right? Yep. Because it keeps them in check, it keeps them aligned. So would you imagine or could you imagine not having your partner and just having your body of people, the people you surround yourself with? So in this phase in my life, like I'm about to turn 30, I'm a baby. I'm like looking around and I'm going, what are their strengths? I don't look at their weaknesses. Exactly to your point, like push the weaknesses aside. We all have weaknesses. Great. So glad we're harping on all of them in 2023. I want to know what your strengths are. And like, I want to know if we align.
Yep.
So, because I want to push you up. I know, perfect example, Rabah, in dating. I always have this conversation with my friends. I go, a partnership is for you two to meet at the exact same place in your life. Hopefully, never actually happens. And that other person's supposed to push you to be amazing. Because if you know yourself, you know you're going to give them everything. You're going to give them everything. You're going to be their best supporter. You're going to be their fucking cheerleader. But are they your cheerleader?
Yeah.
And you had something beautiful, giving and receiving, which is the last point. Because I hear everything you say loudly and clearly. I'm like, yes. I firmly believe that at a business, right? A business in general, down to a transaction only makes sense if both parties, it's a mutually beneficial agreement.
Yes.
And one starts to push a little with the boundaries, starts to take more than give, it's no longer a viable agreement. It's no longer a great transaction because somebody's going to get bitter. Someone feels dissatisfied. There's buyer's remorse. There's tension there, right? It's the same thing with a partner and it's the same thing with your group of people. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, totally. And I would even take it a step further where I think some of the best relationships are where people overgive. I think one of the things is when things are good, just keep going. And that applies not only into relationships, but in businesses, because there's always going to be something. And I think honestly, the person you choose to partner with is the biggest and most important decision of your life. I have seen really successful people scuttle their life because of a really bad partnership that doesn't serve them. And so, and it's hard. Again, this is where you really need to lean on a support network or people and get a constellation of, essentially judgments on like, hey, what do you think I'm doing here? Because when you're in the fog of war, you can't see it. I mean, that's literally the point, right? Like it's very challenging. And so I would say that is so huge. And I think of it almost in this metaphor of like running on a track. Like, is this person holding you back? If they're holding you back, they got to go because you're running slower and you're having to pull them along. If they're by your side, you can think about like, okay, cool, this person's not slowing me down. And to your point, maybe there's some ancillary things that happen that is like really helpful, or they ground me. So like one of the things is I work all the time. And so I need a partner that is social, because like I'll just work all the time. And so they'll be like, hey, Rabah, let's go out. Let's have a drink. Let's go meet friends. I'm like, yeah, okay, I know I need to do it. I should do it. And then the ideal partner is, like you said, the one that's pulling you forward and actually making you go faster towards your goal. So that's kind of how I see partnerships. But yeah, same thing for business as well, where I think the more you can over deliver, especially again, going back to a friendship analogy, I always like all my close friends, I'll always just try and reach out every week or two of like, hey, what are you working on? How can I help? What's going on? And it comes from a place of sincerity. This isn't just to put like, political capital in the bank. It's like, I truly want to help these people. And I think that karma is real, and I don't know if it is real for everybody, but I think it's real. And sometimes the other thing is you might not be around long enough to see the actual output, like the seeds that you planted. You might not enjoy the trees for the shade, but I don't know. I think it's just a more meaningful, honorable way to live life.
Ooh, I love, oh, so many good things there. And I always love a reference to plants.
There we go.
Mainly because I kill all plants that I touch, but I also understand the beauty that goes with plants. Um, you know, again, I told you I watch you and I see the relationships that you nurture. Chase Moseni, one very, very deep, beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Um, and you also reminded me that Jordan Menard said something to me a while back, and it was from his father. And I think it applies to everything in business. It applies to your personal relationships, whether it be your partner or whether it be your friends.
Yeah.
And he said, marriage is a competition of who can outserve the other.
It's beautiful. It's a great way to look at it.
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
Because now it's no longer about you. It's about how you can serve that person. And I believe
Yep.
that with your friendships, and I believe that with collaboration. So I will say that the one strength that I do have is relationships.
Mhm.
And in those relationships, since the dawn of time of Supra, all the way to where we are now, the people who feel like they are owed something are going to be the people that get buried the fastest.
Yeah.
They're the ones that bury themselves, actually, and don't even
Yep.
realize it.
Yep.
The way that I broker deals in terms of collaborations, let's just say, Rabah, I think you're perfect for Nike, and Nike's looking for a partnership, blah, blah, blah. I'll connect you to, and I won't want any part in terms of monetary compensation, in terms of referral, because that's just not my business.
Yep.
What does that do? I do. I love that you said political points, right?
Mhm.
What does that do? What it does is you truly just have that person's best interest in mind. It's that mutually beneficial collaboration, right? And when you start to say things or do things for other reward other than just pure, I want to see you win, it has no longevity, it has no legs behind it. And I see that with you and your relationships with people, just again, from a high level watching and I admire that about you. So that was my little like gas you up moment.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think there's kind of two ways people look at transactions. I think there's business and relationships. And I think once you start to mix the two, it's very hard to go back. And so let me just give you an easy example. So like I have a friend and I need to move, and I asked a friend, hey man, can you help me move? I'll buy you some pizza and some beer. Okay, cool. Let's do it. Like, oh, hey man, can you help me move? I'll pay you $100 an hour. It's like, dude, You know how much money I make? $1,000 an hour. Why the fuck am I going to give it? And it just totally ruins the whole way that you think of things. And again, there's nothing wrong with having business relationships and friends. And then I candidly think business relationships to friends is a really good on ramp. And then friends to business can be tricky. So make sure that you have a lot there aligned, because there's something, it's almost like moving in with each other, where it's like, I have some good friends that I would never live with, kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just having the kind of cognitive understanding of like where this is going to go. But you're spot on. And I think once you bring the economics of business into things, it really, again, perverts it. And I'm a huge capitalist. I love money. I love to make money. But at the end of the day, I think this life is about cultivating really deep relationships with people you care about. Money can absolutely help and enable that, but it's not the core that starts there. The core that starts there is, again, giving value without any expectation of receiving anything.
Money is access, but money is also a poison. And it's so good that you identify that. It's also really awesome that you have self-actualization to understand that you love money. And we live in a capitalistic nation.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is, right? 100% aligned. And I agree with you too, in terms of living with and kind of commingling things a little too closely. All of my friends in this space, and I think, I don't know for your case, but are my friends first.
Yeah.
Oh, well, like, not so much. I know what you do, right? And then I become friends with you, and then
Yeah.
I get to choose whether or not we're close friends or we're business friends.
100%.
Best position to be in, other than feeling like obligatory friendship based off of business, or obligatory commitment and loyalty based off of friendship first into business. So it goes in the
Yeah.
inverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I wanted to dive into, what you said, you kind of glazed over it, that you knew in your gut, or you kind of had like an ego gut play when you were selling women's shoes, which I
Yeah.
agree with, you should sell, because selling actually makes people uncomfortable and you start to do things that you have to do to hit quota.
Yep.
But you said that you didn't like that feeling. It was a gut check. I've had a similar feeling. Kind of walk me through what that ick feeling is and why that continues to motivate you. And does that feeling still haunt you to this day?
Yeah, like I said, my biggest fear in life is to be mediocre. A lot of it comes from, like, there's a great line where the father's story is imprinted on the son. So I'm a first generation immigrant. My grandparents on my dad's side actually couldn't read or write, which is like crazy. And so my dad grew up in Algeria, a big country in North Africa, and like really hard life. Like, it was my grandpa was essentially a shepherd, and in the 90s I went over to visit. Like, we have like kind of like a family compound ish, if you will, and they didn't have any running water or electricity in the 90s, to give you kind of some context there. And so my dad came to the States when he was 18, taught himself English, learned all this stuff, libraries, the whole thing. And now he's like a really, comfortable middle class American. We were brought up kind of lower middle class, but not like we had Christmas, like not poor at all by any stretch, but not, you know what I mean, extravagant vacations, things of that nature. And so there's just that kind of gnawing at me of like what my dad accomplished. I need to be kind of multimillionaire style end game, because what he went from to where he's at, he did all, like, I won't have to ever know what not eating is like. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
Not
crazy.
enough
Like,
to do the bare minimum. It's not enough.
is 0%. And so I was just so lucky in my upbringing, where my dad was insanely hard on me, super immigrant mentality. And my mom was this loving, vivacious, unique Mexican woman, just an absolute firecracker, awesome, awesome woman. And so like, not that my dad didn't love me, but there was just a lot of like very, just hard conversations. And one of my favorite stories from my dad, just to give you some insight into like his mentality, is, so I played soccer growing up, and this is, maybe fifth grade or something. So super young kids. And he was coaching our soccer team, because kind of like at that place, if you're foreign, it's like, oh, soccer, why don't you coach it? And he got kicked off because he was just like, "You suck, you're okay." And it's like, dude, these are like kids. But he just has, and I have that now as well, where there's not a lot of patience for no effort and no striving for excellence. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's the life you want to live. It's just not my vibe and my tribe, and I want to be around the people that do that. So I'm all that anxiety, if you will, comes from me trying. I guess it's cliche, but me trying to have my dad say he's proud of me, type of stuff, and that's really a lot of where it came from. And when I kind of had that introspection of like, dude, I did all this stuff. I went to school. I did all these things. Like I was, and the other thing is, I was living a life that other people were telling me to live, not the life I wanted. So everybody's like, oh, you got to go do this. You got to go do that. And it's hard when you're younger because you don't know who you are. You don't know what's going on. You don't really have, or most people don't have the financial resources to explain or explore a lot of things. And so it was just trying for me to step into not only my greatness, but the personal legend and the life I wanted to lead. And it's a challenge. And like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or say anything is easy if you're on the other side of this, but I will say it's the most fulfilling thing that you can do in your life. And it'll unlock opportunities that you thought were, you know, insane if you had wrote them down a year before. And so it just really, and I also think in a weird way, going back to The Alchemist, which is super easy read, awesome read, you should definitely do it, is when you do pursue your personal legend and you do go after the thing that's really deep and burning in your soul, the universe actually starts to conspire with you to make it happen. And so that's when I know I'm going down the right path, where you'll just start to catch breaks that really, like, there would be no reason for you to catch this break, but you're in that right place at that right time and you're pursuing that personal legend, and the universe just opened doors for you. And the last thing I will add is that really high level people usually have a very good vibe check on like, wow, this person is bought in. And I read a ton of business memoirs, and the number one thing in there is not intelligence. I would say luck and timing are probably the two biggest functions of success for a business, but throwing those aside, it's absolutely perseverance, where people are pivoting, people are doing this. There's these near death experiences that entrepreneurs have 3 or 4 times a year. And that's just the gig. But without that unerring, like, we're either going out on our shields or we're taking that hill, we burn the boats. Without that mentality, I think it's very hard to succeed in entrepreneurship or even high level jobs, leadership, C-suite, really high functioning engineers. Like, there just has to be this unerring belief that you are him or you are her, and nothing's going to fucking stop you. And it's hard to cultivate that. But once you can get it and you can find that belief in yourself, the world becomes your oyster, and you can really have a fruitful life. And you also start to radiate positivity and drive and inspiration, which again, kind of, in my opinion, makes the world a better place.
Yeah. Layers. Again, so many layers to what you said, right? Like the level of excellence in which you are now familiar with. Anything below that is just garbage. I feel that. Next is going, and I'm hyper simplifying what you said, right? And the next, I think, too, to your point, is I feel like the world's currency, especially in our space, is the ability to communicate effectively. And the ability to communicate effectively is A. B, it's discernment. Discernment is also a really big one, of being able to make the decisions that you know in your gut are leading you in the right direction, and being able to take the brunt and responsibility of those decisions, whether they do well, they don't do well, that's another one. Then the third is actual execution. You actually have to execute the ideas. And that might be you surrounding yourself with executors, and you are the beautiful brain that, conceptualizes those ideas. Or can you do both? And if you do both, you're a juggernaut. And I think the point that you made, maybe not directly, is being able to have a vibe check. Well, it was directly. The vibe check is huge. And that, I think, aligns with discernment, is being able to kind of select and go, yes, no, bullshit, not bullshit, is huge. We're a little shorter on time, so I'm going to push this straight to our last part of hot takes, because I definitely want to hear your hot take. But I wish this was a 2-hour podcast, because we could go hard in the paint with like all these different topics. That being said, Rabah, what is your current hot take, whether it be in the life, in the D2C space? I want to hear it.
My biggest, I think I got like 3, and then I got a B2B SaaS one. I'm actually starting to become fairly bullish on Twitter ads or X ads. I think the new update with kind of making the ad look more native is really interesting. So I think that actually might become an interesting acquisition channel behind Meta and Google. So that's my first hot take. I think communities are going to, this is also a 2023 prediction, but I think communities are going to carry brands in 2023 and 2024. I think communities, brands that have the ability to establish a meaningful, functioning community are just, that's going to be the essentially uh, rocket boosters, and that's going to really differentiate their brand and product from others. And then the last one, not necessarily, more of like a lukewarm take, but I think the growth era is coming to, it's starting to sunset, and you're going to see the profitability era come up where people are going to be much more cognizant of their unit economics, their profitability versus everything before was essentially all about top line growth, growth at all costs, et cetera, et cetera. I think the market is going to reward more value and profit versus growth. And so there's going to be, I think, a bunch of ramifications with that thesis, not only in terms of investment deployment, because almost all VC capital is predicated on growth, not value or profit. And so there's going to be kind of shorter windows. I think you can invest in companies because at the end of the day, like if you start to spit off a bunch of cash flow, like you don't need money. Like
Right.
why would I raise money and give you all this equity? I already have a business that's printing me money. So those are kind of my three hot takes. And then my last one is B2B SaaS doesn't have any levers for growth. It needs to be an ecosystem built, or high ticket B2B SaaS, excuse me, like something like Foreplay or something where it's at a lower price point, I think is a different, but a high ticket B2B SaaS doesn't have levers. And that's a really hard thing to explain to investors because every investor will ask, okay, what's the growth lever? What are the levers you're going to pull on? And you're like, well, no, you have to think about it as actually as an ecosystem. And that is very hard to explain to people. So I gave you forks for extra
Your
credit.
hot takes are not that hot. Maybe to
No,
me because we align
the
in
Twitter
so many
ads
ways.
is the Twitter
Twitter,
ads.
Twitter ads is pretty hot.
Okay.
I mean, look, anybody who has, anyone who has a brain knows that Twitter is next. So if you don't have a brain, grow one. This is me helping you. The reason why I say that is because what do we talk about? Hypersaturation across all channels. We talk about, I think one of the episodes we talked about how video right now is hypersaturated. Why?
Yep.
Duh, TikTok. I always say
Yep.
duh because common sense is not common. We're all stupid, including myself. So, you have this hypersaturation of video on TikTok. So why is it not performing on Facebook and Instagram? It's a duh. Same thing with Twitter. I think Twitter right now, when Elon decided to be a little bit more spicy dicey, I was like, you should be buying right now, media buying on this platform because people are going to be on it. It's just common sense, right? But in terms of a couple different things, you said community. I would say, I'm going to say lifetime value of a brand, community of a brand, and brand loyalty is the highest form of currency. I agree. I've been preaching this for a long time. We steered away from the Nikes, I would say the legacy brands for a while. We said, F the legacy brands. I want to go after the very boutique brands because I want to support small business. But there's a reason why the legacy brands are legacy. They see 10 miles ahead, if not 10 years ahead. I agree with you. I think things are flipping back to legacy. How do you become a legacy? Now, how you become and sustain that is going to be a feat in itself, and you have to be very creative in how to do so. So that's huge. And that's always what I say is like the legacy brands are the ones that weren't really hit during iOS 14 as much, or I would say recession-wise, because they have that brand loyalty. It's a full functioning machine.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. Now I want to get into the SaaS hot take because this is something you and I can banter about. I agree. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. Hello, Triple Whale. The only way that I think 90% of our new customer acquisition has come from personal relationships, referrals, and speaking events, which is the complete opposite of my nature, which is media buying. And it is a very weird space to be in, but it is kind of exciting because now it's a puzzle you can't necessarily crack, but you're kind of inching your way towards it. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, the easiest way I think I would explain it is when I started the marketing at Triple Whale, I was trying to run it like a direct response D2C brand, and that was a huge mistake. And I pivoted very quickly. And what I realized is you need to run it more of like a CPG company or consumer product goods company, where you are trying to be omnipresent everywhere. And ideally, you're in that person's decision set, or, the real holy grail is you're the first decision in that decision set when that person's ready to consume. So I think people go through, especially in SaaS, kind of a 3-phase funnel of problem aware. Okay, I know I have a problem. Solution aware. Oh, there are solutions out there. And then product aware. Oh, this product actually solves the thing for me. Boom, I'm going to do it. And so that's where I don't think, and if you look at all these other, like Adobe, all these other massive SaaS people, they don't run paid ads either, which is like, hey, hello, big sign. Like, why would you run all these paid ads when all these people who have way more sophisticated teams than we do don't run ads? And so when I put all that together, I understood, oh my gosh, this is an ecosystem. And so to your point, because the other cool thing is if you can build a brand, there's a kind of that funny line of you build your brand online and your business offline. And when you have these really cool virtual connections, and then you throw something like the Whaleys or something like that, and then you actually get in person, there's almost like these primed relationships that are ready to bloom. And you can get some really awesome halo effects on that, on the brand, where it's like, oh, I met X and X at this Triple Whale event or what have you. And then that stuff matters. And at the end of the day, I think the funny thing about D2C and SaaS is like D2C are incredible at creating really amazing strategies, and SaaS are incredible quants. And so I've been really interested in kind of the confluence of both, because when you go to these huge SaaS companies, the CMO is almost always this really nerdy girler guy that's just super in the numbers. What's the pipeline? MQLs, SQLs, blah, blah, blah. But they couldn't think of a marketing campaign to save their life. And so I think the blend of that is where you're going to see a lot of really interesting value generated, where you can take D2C tactics to SaaS, and then honestly, SaaS tactics to D2C, where you can get a little bit more granular in your funnel. But that's kind of where that hot take stems from.
Yeah, no, it's a valid hot take. You've got a D2C mentality, right? Where we would assume that in e-commerce, right, you drive people to a landing page. It's a dynamic enough landing page. You give them enough, I would say, value props in there. Do a little fun comparison, AdBeacon versus Triple Whale BS, right?
Yeah.
Which is always funny to me, because I always think of like, everyone's asking me, well, how are you better? That's always a question we get asked in this space. How are you better? Well, I would say, how do we make you better?
100%
Right?
with
Like, it's a different conversation. I also believe in B2B SaaS it's been a very interesting journey, at least on my end as a CEO, is I've come to this really cool place where I go, okay, if you align with me, you're most likely going to align with AdBeacon, which is kind of a cool space. It's a little scary to attach my personality to a product so closely. However, I do believe in it that strongly. But in this space, to what you were saying, that is the halo effect. And I get to go and hang out with you and have fun with my friends, but we get to have real conversations about brands that have suffered post iOS 14 through 14.5 and now 17. How are we helping in this space? And we're really just here to help. And the different ways to get to that result is up to you. And I always present it that way, and not to make anyone upset, but I didn't love how everyone was coming after Triple Whale when you guys did the price increase. I talked about it on a different podcast episode, and I was really upset because I always say this. For those of you who believe in bashing others during a time that is very opportune, just remember there's more time.
Yeah.
And that time will end up circling back, and all you owe to this world is to be a good human. And as somebody who is a quote unquote competitor with Triple Whale, I wasn't here for it. So I apologize on behalf of the community, because that was shitty.
To be fair, I apologize on behalf of Triple Whale. It was more of a comms issue than anything. Like at this moment in time, when you say anything like price increase or something like that, like the pitchforks are going to come out. So candidly, I thought the reaction was warranted, but the messaging was horrible, because what happened was we ended up like, and this was my first day back from the Vision Quest, so that was really interesting.
That was great.
We had like these 3 really interesting points to orbit around, and we didn't. So like one of them was 75% of our customers' monthly bill is actually going to go down. Okay, nobody's going to argue with that. Our free or our entry level plan went from 300 a month to 129 a month. Okay, nobody's going to argue with that. And then we're going to launch a forever free plan in August. Like, and so I do appreciate the sympathy, but candidly, it was definitely a failure on the comms department from us, because there was a much better way to make sure that people understand that we were trying to look out for them. And it didn't come across. It came across like, hey, you need to pay us more money. And that's right. That's the double-edged sword of community. Like, it needs to be sincere, it needs to be genuine, and that messaging wasn't the best messaging that we could have used, and it didn't put our users first. And I think if you get away from putting your users first and you start trying to please investors or trying to make more money or whatever, like, ideally you're going to make more money, but it needs to be a byproduct of value generation. And so anywho, too long didn't read. That was a traumatic event for me, but we ended up, coming out okay on the other side. But it was when you do build the following in a community, you have to be very precise in your communications, and this one wasn't. That wasn't necessarily the case in this one.
It happens, and I will be the first to tell you, no, you guys did not communicate that well. That was awful.
Not great.
That was a fail.
Not great.
Never said that wasn't a fail, but I did say I didn't like the way that things went. And there's specific situations. I'm not just saying as a whole. There were specific situations.
Oh, totally.
What are you doing?
Totally.
But yeah, I agree. Your communication, and look, we all capitalize off of everybody's misfortune. I went and said, hey, we can communicate better, but I will never, ever put someone down. It's just an overarching theme, right? That what you said, karma, right? It's an overarching theme too, that who are you as a person? Who have you decided to be today? And can you look yourself in the mirror and go, yep, this is who I am? Or, look yourself in the mirror and go, I am, the antagonist in this story, and it fuels fire. By the way, just as a heads up to some people, if you haven't really thought about this, if you're looking at reality TV, if you're looking at scenarios where the antagonist has power, there is a very dark power that comes from this type of feeling, which is really exciting. There's also a very dark crevice you'll fall into and can't claw your way out of as deep as you get into it. So just be very careful with that line. That's my only message. That's my hot take.
Yeah, no, I 100% endorse. I mean, when you can operate from generating accomplishment and feelings of positivity from your internal, like, locus of control versus external, your life gets just immensely better, because and that's kind of what you see with, actors or really big influencers and stuff like that. They're so caught up in things that they can't control. And to me, that's like endless anxiety. Like, I'm a big stoic guy, and I only things that get my mental cycles, maybe besides memes, is things I can control. Because other than that, like, why the fuck do I care? It kind of goes into fatalism at that point, where it's like, dude, like, I'm not religious, but I think religion's helpful in this case, where it's God's will, or if God wills it, or all the religions kind of have some sort of variation of that. And just control what you can control, be a good person when you can. And I don't know, I just found, and again, people can live their lives however they want, there's no judgment on that, but I just found it to be a more meaningful way of living. And like, I do believe that you attract what you put out. And one of the things that, like, I know for me is a red flag is when people treat people different. Yeah. Based on their, station in life, or where they've achieved, or like they're really shitty to the server, but like are really kind of cordial with you. And like, that stuff just is off-putting to me. And again, I'm not judging their personalities. I'm just telling you how I like to triangulate on the people that I want to be around.
Oh, I'm judging their personality. That's shit.
There you go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Like, let me do it. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. And that's like the beauty of friendship. Like, I doubt this would ever happen, but like, Rabah, if you were ever being shitty, you'll get a text from me and be like, why are you being fucking shitty? And I expect that from my friends too, to be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Do I have a booger in my nose? Like, yeah, I want you to tell me I have a booger in my nose. And so I couldn't agree. That to me is the whole point of friendship. So like, in a weird way, I'm incredibly judgmental until you're my friend. And once you've, crossed the boundary, it's like, dude, we're homies, we're ride or dies. Like, don't kill people, pedophilia. Like, there's obviously some third rails, but like, for the most part, I want to be there, help you and support you and get you to the place that you're trying to get to. And there's not really room. I think another way to say it is you can't learn when you're being judged. And
No.
so if you want to help that person and convey wisdom or at least perspective, it can't come from a place of judgment. It has to come from a place of vulnerability, respect, and just genuine care for their well-being.
Oh, I agree. We're best friends now, kids.
That's
The end.
besties.
I have my hot take, and then we'll kind of round out.
Yay.
Yay! Okay, so my hot take is, oh, I gotta look at you dead in the eye for this. My hot take is that whoever or organic social teams and paid media teams should be one team moving forward. Um, and I believe that there should be one leader with both teams moving forward. If you have a separate organic team to your
Mhm.
paid media team and they're not talking, you're already losing, like big time. You're losing big time. So that's my hot take.
I think it's right. I think for me, and the way I see it is they're two sides of the same coin, and it feels weird that they would be mad at each other. But I'm with you. I think there's a weird uh, perversion. Like at the end of the day, marketing, whatever marketing you do, uh, uh, take it a ratchet back. Like I think the job of a CMO is twofold. It's to get momentum or keep momentum if you have momentum, and allocate capital. And then from that, like if your organic events are doing amazing and your paid isn't, then that's fine. Give more money to organic. But I totally agree with you that I think um I don't know that they necessarily are the same function. I think they're a marketing team, but I think they have, because I think you need different skill sets in either or. Like I organic has to be somebody like a Tommy Clark where he's literally on Twitter all day. He gets the zeitgeist, he gets the funny things, he can jump on these things, like yada yada. Tommy couldn't buy ads to save his life. And again,
No,
there's
but
nothing
I'm
wrong
saying
with that.
there's somebody that needs to be, let's just say it like this. Okay. So let's just say I'm the director of media.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's just really put that down to organic and paid being Facebook and Instagram. So we'll just be
Yep.
really siloed. Okay. And the way that I would work is that Rabah, you're in charge of organic, and let's just use John Doe is in charge of paid.
Yep.
I myself am leading both teams and seeing Rabah's fucking incredible organic social strategy, and I
Yep.
understand John or Joe's strategy, and they need to align. There should never be this disconnect because what often happens is you've got one, everybody thinks they're a rock star. The
Yes.
organic team thinks that they're rock stars
Yes.
because they're building brand awareness or building brand equity. Okay.
Yes.
And then you've got the rock stars that are actually bringing in the revenue. Who's more
Or
important?
getting the credit for bringing in the revenue.
Attribution.
So now I'm seeing the clarity of your thoughts. That makes tons of sense. No, I think at the end of the day that comes down to leadership, because there's not a really, this is something that I struggled with at Triple, where there's not, especially in B2B SaaS. Like with D2C, you can get it a little bit closer, but um, it's really hard to justify the existence of organic because all the metrics are usually soft. Like you have like impressions, you have user or follower growth, you have all these things that they matter, but like at the end of the day you need to bring money in, and if you don't have that direct line to revenue, I have this theory of proximity to profits. The closer you are to the revenue, the harder it is for them to fire you. So no, I totally agree. And I also would take it even a step further where I think the paid media team, I mean, depending on the configuration of your business, but more and more you're seeing this, I think the paid media team should be more so an augmentation of the organic team. And the
Yes.
organic team is running, hey, like if you have like a competent CMO or head of marketing or whatever the leader of marketing is, they're usually going to plan out your year. That year is going to be broken down into quarters, and there's going to be these big milestone events within that quarter, whether that be a campaign, a literal event, what have you. And then from that, you have your paid media support those, but then you also have some BAU paid media as well. So I think we're saying the same thing different ways. I'm totally tracking.
We
I
are. We
think,
are. Yeah, we are
yeah.
saying the same thing in different ways. I think it gets a lot more complex. Like I call that position that I beautifully put myself into as the unicorn position, where somebody's understands like the captivation and awe of organic to be able to build a community, and then also understands the I would say the edited version for conversion, right, of
100%.
that beautiful idea, and being able to merge the two. I've talked about this
100%.
performance with brand. But I also think it trickles down to, for example, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or now coined the Cyber 5, is if we're going to
Oh,
drive,
really? I'm getting old. I
Yes.
haven't heard that yet. Amazing.
I heard that recently. I put it on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Thank you. So I think what's interesting is like, for example, if I were to do Instagram lives and Facebook lives pre-peak, right? To gain that traction, you want to build that community in order for paid media to double back on it. The most qualified audience is right there in front of you. You're not building it. So what
1000%.
I mean is they need to come together and it needs to be a beautiful marriage rather than this like obligatory stepsister vibe, which is what kind of it has been in the space. So that's my hot take. Um,
I love that. And I think the marriage, and I'll wrap it up on this. I think the marriage analogy is beautiful where right now it feels more like this arranged marriage and these two people hate each other versus like, hey, we're in this together. Let's make the most beautiful business baby we can. So I 100% agree with you.
yeah, no, cool. Look at us agreeing on things. Okay. That being said, Rabah, it has been like, I can't even put into it a true honor. And I'm very grateful to have you on here, just to even be able to hang out and talk and then have it be recorded. But you being on here just pushes the momentum of these types of conversations that I really just want to bring to the forefront. Yeah, it's an AdBeacon podcast, but it really is more, so much more than that. It's people. And where can these people find you?
Yeah, I am pretty active on the Twitters at Rabah Rahil. I also am on LinkedIn. I never check my DMs. You can DM me, but I need to get better about that. My DMs on Twitter and my DMs on LinkedIn are pretty terrible. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out. You know, maybe take a shot in the dark, knock on the universe. I will try and get to all the DMs I can. I have Friday, I have tomorrow, kind of chalked up for that. But yeah, the Twitters will probably be the best place to reach me. Just at me. Always looking to help people out if I have the time. More than happy to talk you through your business, your workflows, whatever you're doing. But yeah, always just trying to give it back, pay it forward.
Love that. The tweeters, the
The
X.
tweeters. I might be the old guy. I might just hold on to it.
You
I
can
don't know.
hold on
I
to it.
can
It
do
still
that,
has
right?
the sound when you scroll
Yeah.
down. And
Yeah.
I'm so new to Twitter. By the way, I'm almost at 800. And when I hit that 1,000, I want to
Let's go. Let's get you the
join the
K.
party.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but okay, Rabah, it is a wrap up time. I am blessed to have you in my life. And I hope everybody listening enjoyed it and give us your feedback because that always helps. But have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on, Phoenix, and I appreciate your flexibility with all my scheduling faux pas. This was incredible. You're a wonderful host, even better human, and I can't wait to see you at the Sunlane conference.
Thank you. See you at the Sunlane Conference.